Okay, welcome to Graybeard Syndicate. Today on 5Ws, we are with Ben Drawdy, the great Ben Drawdy, who owns No Egrets Tattoo in Clarksville, Tennessee. And a friend of mine, really good friend, brought him in today so we could learn about his life a little bit, and let's have some fun. So Ben, I've known you for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Probably
it's probably going
10 years.
I was gonna say it's going on 10 years, I believe.
10 years now.
Yeah.
But besides being an owner of a tattoo shop in Clarksville, me and you have a relationship outside of that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, you come, you've hunted on the property a bit. You come to the house every now and again. Blah blah blah. You know, but you know a lot about me. You know, I'm pretty much from here, but you're from originally where at?
I'm originally from Albany, Georgia. It's southwest. It's about 60 miles away from Alabama, 60 miles away from the Florida border. So it's right in the corner.
Right in the middle.
Right in the corner, right in the middle.
So you got to deal with all that SEC football down there.
Oh, man. Yeah. My brother is an Auburn alumni as well.
Right.
So you talking about, now granted, most of my family just kind of goes along with supporting my brother.
Right.
But it has always been a point of contention with people I went to school with because it's Bulldog country, man.
Right.
Right
in the middle of it.
Whenever I was growing up, it was very easy because Georgia wasn't like the greatest. So it was more like, well, I mean, we're loyal, but we really like the winners. And then when they started gaining ground, it's like everything else. All family aside, no one cares. A house divided. There's brothers that one went to Auburn, one went to Georgia, and then they don't talk for the week. They just don't talk.
That's so funny. And it's pretty much across the South that way, you know.
It really is. It really is.
But you're in a spot where, you know, the deep South.
Right, and on top of that, you have rivals that cross conferences.
Traitors.
So you have the ACC, which is where the Seminoles are,
right.
And used to a big rival. Really, anyone in state hates whoever's in state first. And then they start with whoever their next state rival is. So it's like Auburn hates Alabama, but they also fight with Georgia, or they fight with Georgia. They fight with the Gators.
Yeah,
you know.
LSU.
LSU,
all those teams. I hate them all. So you were raised in South Georgia.
Yes.
Southwest Georgia, right?
Yes.
And all through high school, through high school.
Yep.
Right?
I went to it was a Christian school, private school, part of the GISA, which was the independent school board. So when we played sports and stuff, we stayed in there. But I graduated there all 12 years. I went to the community college locally for a year and a half until I realized I did not want to be academically in school because I was going after like a pre-vet program, so it would take me 6 or 8 years. So I went into recording. I was already playing music.
Oh, recording for music.
Yeah. I was already playing music. So then I was like, hey, if I have to go to school,
drummer,
I need to go to school. Yes, drummer. I was a drummer, but I also did a lot of front of house sound for the band. Like we would work together on some stuff. But it was one of those things where, at the time it was you have to get a higher education. And that was the whole rhetoric is, even for my parents never went to higher education, but they were like, that's the goal, you have to do this, so pick something.
Do something,
do it.
Right.
So I was like, well, if I have to do something, pre-vet wasn't going to do it because of how much schooling I had to do. So then I was like, well, recording engineering is a little bit different, so I'll try to go into that. So I went to a trade school for recording.
And it was
Full Sail, which is outside. It was in Orlando, Central Florida area.
So it wasn't a stretch for you to get there, but you had to stay there.
Yes.
Did you stay with somebody, or did you have a billet there?
So the funny thing is my dad owned and operated a construction company most of his life, and that was what my first job was when I was 8. I was a trash sorter. We had a fire pit, so he would take a 2x4 that was 24 inches long, and he'd be like, take this. This is your meter. Anything smaller than it, pile it up, burn it. And anything bigger than this, sort it and put it in the front yard so the cut guy can go grab it. That was my first job. So I did construction all the way up until I realized I definitely did not want to do construction. Just because I commend everybody that's in a trade like that. Those are all tough jobs. Way before micro did dirty jobs. This was some of the shittiest. Roofing is some of the hardest stuff you could do. Framing houses, we do fire restoration work, do handyman stuff. It would just in South Georgia, it was just miserable.
I mean, it makes money.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
It is, and that's the thing.
There's a reason it makes money.
Well, I think the instant gratification aspect of like generational changes really does deflower the concept of having that trade school situation, because now it's easy to label someone where if you're only about it for like, because really the selling grace is it makes money and it's a constant thing.
Yes.
Well, now you have other people that are saying, "Oh, you're just in it for greed or whatever." It's like, no, it's not that. Like, money does, whether you like it or not, money does control a lot of opportunities.
Absolutely.
So you try not to make it just about that, but a business is a business. It is about either turning a profit or generating income or rotating success.
Or you're living in your parents' basement.
Or you're living in your parents' basement, and you'll see people do kind of like wacky stuff. They start compromising their own like financial morals because they're trying to fund this idea that may or may not have been planned. Whenever all of it, I'm definitely not on the thing of all you need is hard work and you keep your head to the grindstone. I think it's that mixed with opportunistic concepts where you have the discernment to tell when something is a good opportunity without having to exploit it or deceive to get it or whatever. Like, business gets kind of weird because you still have the cut of cloth of, well, business is about, hey man, if I knock you in the top of the head and I take the money sticking out of the back of your pocket, hey man, that's just business. You should have been paying attention. And it's like, there's people that think that like the whole cutthroat type, and I guess that is a definition of business, but what's cool is you control how you react to things. Mm-hmm. I have never been wanting to do business that way. So I try to be the boss I would want to work for kind of thing.
But still, it's a business.
But it's still a business. It's still a business. And
so you went to Full Sail.
I went to Full Sail.
So you could start a business.
Really
start in recording, I guess.
Right,
That's what Full Sail does.
The mentality was I wanted to either be a drummer doing music that way, or helping, or some derivative of the two, where I worked as a session recording artist for people, or not even me as an artist, but I helped in the whole rigmarole.
The process.
Right. And then at the same time, it would fund my bills, and then I could also pursue maybe being in a band or so. So I did that whenever I moved to Nashville.
Behind, front of house music or whatever, or mixing in a studio and being in a band, it helps you.
It's just all handshakes. It's up there with being like a roadie for a big band. Yeah. Most of the roadie guys are also in their other bands that are kind of coming up.
All right.
And if you're real good, you can open for the band that you're working for, and then you double dip, and it's all a write-off. So it's great.
That's right. So school, 2 years there.
Yep, it was 2 years. Interestingly enough, it was supposed to be 13. It's a 13-month course. They give you a 2-year degree in 13 months.
Yeah, because I think I read that you were moving out.
Yeah, so the way Full Sail would work at the time, I haven't really checked into it.
But I have all your books, by the way, still.
Awesome. Yeah, they're great. They're great books. But the way that it was then was with Full Sail, you would come in and you had everything was in blocks of 4 hours. So you had academics classes, and what they tried to do is they'd have classroom time, and then you'd have a 1 4-hour classroom time, and then they'd have a 1 4-hour lab time that would support what you learned. And then the next day you move it down, and it was 7 days a week. There was never a day off. It was all alphabetical order, and it was under the discretion of the program director. Mm-hmm. So if I had a
well, that's what you signed on for.
Absolutely, and I had no problem with that. A lot of people did, because they were like, "Oh, what? How hard can it be?" And it's like you'll have a 5 a.m. class from 5 a.m. To like 9. And then your lab for that might not be till 9 p.m. that night, and you go from 9 to 1. And then you may have a 5 a.m. class the next day, so you go home for 3.5 hours, you eat, you do whatever, then you get your ass up and go back to school. It is lock the door the second the thing comes. They lock the buildings.
So you got, during that, let's just say it is the both ends of the day, you got plan your time wisely in between. You know,
Right.
Get that sleep. You're not partying. You're sleeping.
No,
or studying.
no one really could, because it changed. So every month you would graduate, so to speak, from one class degree program, or not class degree, but like a class to the next class. So one class will be like live sound reinforcement. They go over, all right, this is troubleshooting. If you're running live sound and you have this monitor cut off, what do you do? And then you roll through that. But then once you get done with that, we had an entire month of like MIDI and MIDI programming and how the interfaces of the keyboards work. And then we did an entire month of nothing but like third party off board like mixing tools, whether it be, you know, sound gates and, you know, reverb, all that stuff. We're building all of it, but it was month by month by month. And if you didn't pass the month, they would let you take that class the next month and you would get pulled out of the class. It's just like high school back in the day before the no Child Left Behind thing, where the embarrassment a little bit is you should work harder, because now you are basically an underclassman and you will watch your class keep going. You do 2 of those, by the 3rd you have to pay for that class, and the classes are like $1,200 or $1,800 a piece for the month class. And so a lot of people would just fall out or drop out. They did definitely do that whole, hey, welcome to orientation. There's about 380 of you in here. Look to your left, look to your right. 2 of you will not be here by the time you graduate. And that is exactly right. I had something like, I had like 385 or 90 people in my orientation class. My graduating class was 42 people.
When did you go to this school?
I went to school it was 2001 actually. I will never forget it. The only day other than I had Christmas Day was the only day that they said we will be closed. Every Christmas Eve I had a class, New Year's Day, New Year's Eve I had classes, whatever. The only other day ever, I remember waking up and it felt weird. I remember going outside and I had a roommate. My roommate also went to Full Sail with me. And when I went out there, he was like, I don't know if we're going to school today. I think the world's ending. And I was like, why? And the only TV that we had in the house was on, and it was all September 11th stuff. And it had just happened.
9/11, so got it.
9/11 stuff. So I was there during, like I was going there 2000, 2001, somewhere in there. So when I graduated, I stayed there for a while and just kind of tried to get jobs and stayed in the area. I got a retail job just to pay bills. And it was in the the tourism area, and just the amount of dry up from all of the blowback of just, you know, all of a sudden traveling was terrifying. So no one went anywhere.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I worked on Universal City Walk at the Hard Rock, and I worked in retail. And I mean, it was just, everything would be a ghost town. It would be the weirdest thing to see these gates open and no one. Usually every day, hundreds of people are waiting to go get through the ticket checker on both sides, Islands of Adventure and Universal Studios. It was just pin drop quiet. COVID. You could hear all of the. COVID, it was just like COVID. At places you go, like you could tell how sparsely populated the City Walk is. You could hear all of the music, the ambient music. You could hear every bit.
Normally
of it.
You can't hear that too.
Whenever it's loud, you can't hear it until you're walking by it. Yeah, but yeah.
So you moved here after you graduated.
Yes, I graduated. I worked in retail for maybe about a year and a half until I got enough money to afford moving up to Nashville, because I really wanted to get into music.
Right.
And I figured if I needed to do something, I could at least either be a gopher for a studio, or at the very least, I'll be a runner. I don't mind doing all that stuff. And then,
one of these days, you're going to let you push a button.
Right. They'll be like, hey, I need you to go move that mic. I'm like, okay. And I go in there and move it, like, and they're like, you're fired. That's too much. I'm like, no. But yeah, and it's funny too, because I think being in like doing music and stuff really helped me slide into tattooing, mostly because dealing with people in tattooing, whether it be artists or clients, you get a lot of egos, you get a lot of eccentric people, you get a lot of people that are very highly opinionated, which most of the time is fine, but you deal with that with musicians too. So you kind of get into this, you know, okay, I need to maybe tell bad news without it sounding bad. And you kind of, because you want everybody to be happy.
Everybody to be happy.
So I think that really did prepare me, because tattooing is very similar to being in music, honestly.
I always thought, Houston was in a band. And I always thought that it would probably be easier to become a big Hollywood actor than it would to be a really a big band, because the actor you're in charge of you, right? But when you try to get 3, 4, 5 people to be on the same sheet of music for that long of a time and able to go through the highs and lows of recording, nobody wanting to hear your music, arguing, girlfriends, all that stuff, it is hard. It's amazing how, bands like Metallica and all them how did they do that? I always thought, looking at it from the inside, with those bands, I was like, wow.
Well, I think what happens is people forget that, like, being good at something or being revered for something doesn't pull you out of your. They're still humans. They're still human beings. So they all have their own quirks and traits and all that stuff. So I think what happens is, just like with musicians, people get this idea that, bands are larger than life, and then you realize, wow, one of them is an asshole, or one of them is kind of a piece of shit, and then you're like, oh wow, this guy's really talented, but he's really difficult to deal with.
So you look back at the other bandmates and you go, you must be a saint to put up with that shit.
Sure, yeah, and especially if you are band adjacent, like you watch, especially if you're on the sound crew, you overhear, you basically turn into someone on a crew of, like, it would be about being a personal assistant to someone who the world knows is kind of a bad person.
Right.
It's like everybody talking about J-Lo right now. It's like that. It's like all of a sudden it's like, you got a bad story? Oh, I have a bad story too. And that's the rotation there. It's like you start hearing stuff. People would listen to everything, and especially now with instant gratification, where you have a smart computer with a camera in your pocket anywhere you go. Stuff gets leaked, man. People are just going to be like, this person's an asshole. I just got to catch them one time. And it's one of those things where it's the same in any kind of eccentric stuff. Like even running business, all that stuff, you can only answer to yourself. You only can control your actions of what people do, regardless or say, whatever.
Regardless of the control you have over those employees, you're still only control you. They're going to do what they do.
Sure.
Of course, they want to work and make money and have a great business too. But there are times they're a human being, just like being in a band, and they're going to be their way.
Stuff will happen. Stuff will happen.
Yeah.
Life happens. And I think that's the difference in people that, when you hear people go, yeah, that person's a good boss, or that's a good manager. I think the more they run their business logically based off of, we're still dealing with just people. People, I try really hard to, like I said, be like the kind of, owner or manager or whatever that I would want to work for. And I've worked for people that I didn't like. So, I've worked with people I don't like. You don't have to be best friends as long as the common ground is there. And I think that's the problem with, especially with music. A lot of bands are getting together in like fucking high school.
Oh yeah.
So it's like they haven't even figured who they are. And it's just like it's the same thing with sports. There's a reason why it seems magical that a football team can go back to back to back to back versus like an NBA basketball team because basketball is awesome. It's completely apples and oranges, different sport. But the crew that is working is smaller because it's just, you don't have 11 guys or 22 rotating out or whatever. So when you get to the bigger arena, it is more militarized and controlled. Like, hey, offensive coordinator, you go coordinate some offense. Don't come over here and tell my defensive backs what to do. They're not even listening to you. And that is the delegation, and that's how the bigger you open, the more communication has to happen. But like a head coach only has enough time in the day, so they have coaches that they trust. I don't like having a big arena that big, but my shop's big, and there's not a lot of shops that are that big. And
let's get to the shop right quickly. So let's do that.
Okay.
So you started tattooing. So you were into music, working in a band. You were in a band.
Yep.
You're also doing sound. Mm-hmm. But then you decided, you know what? I want a tattoo.
Well,
you just have an epiphany? You woke up in the middle of the night, oh, I want a tattoo.
No.
Yeah, I want to do that today. Fuck you, band. I'm out.
I wish it was so pretty like that. What ended up happening was speaking of bands, I went through a pretty rough breakup, and it was in my hometown, and my hometown's small enough that I wanted to have a fresh start because everyone had associated me with my predicament. And so everywhere I went, people would ask, and I'm like, I just need to get away from this to get a fresh little start. And I already had graduated, and I still had my drum set, and I was like, I reconnected with a graduation friend of mine that I went to school with, and he was on my football team. We were like buds, and he was like, hey, I live in Franklin, Tennessee. If you don't mind, me and my wife will be totally cool with you just sleeping in like the bonus room until you get your feet under you. I was like, all right, cool. So I felt obligated to, because no matter what people do for me, if you were like, Ben, I hear you're having a rough time, you can come and stay at my house for however long you want, no questions asked, no worries, you can come and go as you please, respect, I love you, whatever you want. I would still be like, I have literally 10 days to find a new place to live because I am not, I'm not squatting, So whenever he let me move in, I immediately was like, I need to hit the ground, try to get a job. I started, I went to some music stores, try to get a job there. I did not move up here with the intent of drawing. I went up here with the intent of just getting my feet up under me. There's something to be said that when you need to restart, I think we all have that moment where we're like, and you do it two or three or four or five times in your life. And it was just a very key moment where I was like, I really need to kind of like just do this for myself. And he was like, move on up here. And I was like, all right, cool. But one of the first places I was struggling to try to find a retail, and I really did not want to go back into retail. I was like, I want to do something in music. And he was like, well, maybe there's this tattoo shop that's downtown Nashville. It's not there anymore, but it was there. And he was like, buddies in my band get tattooed there. Maybe they can give you a job doing something. And that's where I walked in.
Okay, that's thinking outside the box.
Sure. He was like, because a lot of musicians went there. So they were like, maybe that'll get your foot. I was like, hey, that's brilliant. And it was down the road from, like, within walking distance of the CMT headquarters and all that stuff. So you're kind of thinking, all right, well, this maybe makes it a little bit better opportunities. Go. And I talked to the owner, and his name is Billy Joe. And he was like, he's like, I really want to help you out. You have a good story. You seem like a good guy. My thing is I don't have anything that I can pay you to do hourly, but I can teach you how to tattoo if you wanted to learn how to tattoo. I had done a lot of drawings in high school and stuff to give to my friends, but I never in a million, for them to go get tattooed. I never in a million years thought I could do it.
So is this where you apprenticed?
This is where I apprenticed. I apprenticed downtown Nashville. It was my owner. There's a lot of different types of shops. There's some that are just strictly custom, appointment only based, and then there's some that are considered, they're like street shops, grind shops, stuff like that. So tourist shops are kind of more on the street shop side. They're specifically geared to be basic. It's the difference between going to like a 5-star Michelin restaurant chef and then going to a really well-ran Waffle House. They're both respected.
Right.
A short order cook is just super efficient.
Right.
And then the Michelin 5-star chef, he knows what the hell he is doing, absolutely. And whatever he says the price is, that's what it's worth because he's making a work of art for you. So it's apples and oranges, but they do have some handshakes. That was what I was thrown into. I was thrown into, you make money, you treat them and street them, get them in, get them out, get ready for the next tattoo. If it's 10 minutes before we close, how come you can't get another one in? If someone's in standing in the place, cash in hand, if we close at 10, if it's 9:59, they want a sleeve, you're staying till you do the sleeve.
So did this aggravate you a little bit, or did you like, if I want to do this, I'd really like to get into art?
The funny thing is I didn't have anything to compare it to. So at the beginning, right. I did not know, because it is structured without, obviously this would take us, unpacking, but all apprenticeships are slightly different because there is no baseline other than 12 months minimum with someone that's licensed in the state, and then every state is a little different. So it might be different somewhere else. But in Tennessee, that's kind of how they roll with it. So it was one of those things where your mentor gets to curtail where you put your time and effort, how quickly or how slow you go through it. He very, very much was like, I can teach you how to do tattoos. And I was like, all right, cool. He never taught me how to do art. So I was just getting down the level of being like a good worker. I'm busy all the time. I try to make everyone happy. I will do the stuff that people don't want to do just to keep the peace. And I very quickly became the manager. And then I realized after a couple of guest spots and making friends that are actual tattoo artists that are custom everything, they know how to draw up. I'm like, wow, it's like going to like a online college versus going to an actual university. You can still make this work for you, but it is just not the same experience. People will not treat you the same if they know that that's an online college. And it doesn't matter. The education's there, but we put caveats on certain things. That is how a lot of street shops versus custom shops were. And I started thinking, man, I tattoo, but I don't know anything of what I'm doing. Really, I don't know how to create anything. I just know how to alter
the mechanics of how to put ink in skin, but how to make it art.
The way I compared it, I was a musician that was decent, but I was really good at being in a cover band. But I didn't know how to write music. That's the difference. I was really good at a cover band. I was a bar guy.
A buddy of mine, I talked to him about this the other day. Matt Dorito, he used to be bass player for Pop Evil. He knows I listen to a cover band off of Apple. They do a lot of 70s and 80s music. The favorite songs that you like off the album. Not every song off the album, but all the favorites. Lexington Lab Band, great band. But I noticed when listening to their covers on my thing, their music is extremely structured and absolutely perfect, right? But talking to Matt, I realized, those songs weren't written that way. They weren't played that way by the original. They weren't perfect. They were
a little looser,
smoother, the way they wanted it. And there is a difference between the two, between a band that covers and the original band. There is a big difference. They're hard to find sometimes, but you can say, man, that sounds very robotic, as opposed to
especially smooth. And if you know what you're listening to, you can hear the pitch shift, arpeggio, where it'll snap everything to it, and it's subtle. I remember that was really in the mid 2000s, whenever like skater punk and pop punk were getting more radio friendly, and then you'd have like hardcore bands that were crossing over to mainstreams like Under Oath and stuff like that. Those sounds, everyone would, if you didn't know what you were saying, if you didn't know what you were thinking, but you knew you were hearing it and you didn't know how to say it, everyone would say it. They just all sound tunnely and boxy. And the reason why is, in those cases, a lot of it is being painted one item at a time. Which I'm not saying that your favorite older albums are all one mic in the room and they're all playing, but it's like you said, a little looser. It has more of that. Whenever people talk about energy and emotion, that's what it is. It's a little bit looser of a structure. You can feel it naturally flowing. Versus, this is I can feel the producer was like, and then snap in right there. That'll be a quick fade to this beat and this, and then we're gonna do 4 measures of this, and then you can hear the click out, and it's like. There's nothing wrong with that. That is manufactured too. But now what you're doing is you are now representing a team. You're not really representing. There's certain musicians that do like a Dave Grohl. You know damn well he is also in all of the mixing suites, listening to everything, if not outright doing most of it himself. That's why all of his stuff has a very Dave Grohl vibe to it. All his music, you can tell, comes from his bag of tricks, because even his chops and his guitar licks, they're all his. You could hear them. It doesn't mean you can't do them, but when you hear it, you go, I know where you got that from. It's the same thing with art. Like, you can do homages, you can do renditions, you can ask for permission of or original artists and be like, is it cool? I love your stuff. My client loves your stuff. Is there any way I can do like my version of it, or do this version of it, and it'd be okay if I give you credit? That is the integrity way of doing that, because we are in areas of, you don't want to be stealing people's intellectual property. And there is a gray area.
And they earned it.
Absolutely. Especially if they are a tattooer. It's the same thing with music, in the sense that if you've gotten to the point where you've refined your tool, your craft so well that you're known for that sound or that look, then by all means, you get to charge what you want. You get to book when you want, how much you want. And you get to gatekeep your intellectual property. If you see people taking it, and they're not altering it or not asking for permission to alter it or whatever, like, there is a loose lift when you put it on the World Web, even if it's on an individual. There's some gray area where people will say, well, it's up to interpretation now, because now it's a rendition, and my rendition looks exactly like yours. So that's and I'm tipping my cap to you because I made it look like you. And you know, the original artist can feel, oh, thank you, because imitation, form of flattery, whatever. And then there's another flip of the coin where it's like, this bitch trying to steal my shit, you know, or whatever. Like, I try really hard to teach, even whenever I'm teaching apprentices, like, look, it's very easy to accidentally pull something that you go, I think I saw this somewhere, but I can't remember.
Right.
And you need to be able to be humble, because certain people are going to be like, hey, this looks like a piece that I did. And you go, you know what? I saw it 8 months ago, 9 months ago, and that's where I originally thought this, but this, scrap that idea, I'll kick it out. No worries. Sorry about that. Or whatever, you know.
So you apprenticed, and then you said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm opening a shop.
Well, I kind of.
Well, I have to skip forward a little bit, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, but you ended up in Clarksville.
Yes, that the mentality, the motivation behind that was the shop I was tattooing at in downtown Nashville. A lot of my repeat business seemed to correlate with 4-day weekends and soldiers.
Right.
So then I thought, well, because I originally opened a shop with my old mentor, and then we went into some issues to where that soured. So I opened the shop I have now. But back then, that was the mentality. He was like, I want to go into business and we do something together, but I don't want it to like be my main competition. But what can we do? And I was like, how about I just move up to Clarksville, because it's not that far away, but it won't be in your market, and I can establish my own market. And he said, that sounds perfect. So I moved up here with all the intentions of just basically having a shop here, because I already had a place in Nashville, but I just like it up here. It reminds me a lot of where I'm from, except this place actually has a bit of seasons. Like,
Right.
I moved when I moved here in the early 2000s was the first time I saw actual. I lived anywhere where they had actual substantial snow, like it's sticking on stuff. Like
Well, it does stick up a little bit here.
A little bit. I'm not saying it's like,
and
ooh,
we
it's
shut
tundra.
the fucking schools down.
Absolutely, everything. It's like 4 weeks of closed. It's so weird. It's like, I hear it's going to rain kind of bad tomorrow. You know, it's a whole
Even
week.
though by the time the mail runs, you're like, what happened to the snow? You know,
Right, yeah.
The snow's gone by the time the mail runs, and you're like, and they got out of school for this?
Right.
So you open your shop, No Egrets.
No Egrets.
And you're going to give me some pictures, or I'll probably come to the shop, take some video for this here.
Absolutely,
as B-roll type stuff. You know?
Yeah, we opened up that shop. It's in August. Will be our 15-year anniversary.
Yeah. I remember when you were decorating what it is now, that motif you have now, the ceiling, the walls and everything, beautiful in that shop.
Thanks.
It's not just a shack.
Right. And you know, you gain experience, and I think it's cool to be flexible with your business venture. So basically, originally, the shop looked like every other shop, because I came into basically an army town. I did a little bit of recon, just saw, okay, well, this is the vibe of the shop that seems to be working. And we did that for, 4 or 5 years, and it was great. It worked out fine. We kept building. Then it got to where I just wanted to have a good push forward. I'm like, I wanted to be more into the custom concept.
Yes.
And I'll be honest, at the time, my artists at the time that were working with me, they would be like, I really wish people would stop. Like, they would not necessarily question in a negative way, but they always seem to have an issue with the price of what we would claim. But we were basing it off the fact that the baseline up to that point, and it still is in a lot of areas, is $100 per hour. And that $100 per hour has been the industry standard since like the early 90s.
Yeah.
And which is fine. That's nothing wrong with that. But the capabilities of most artists have gotten so much damn better. They're so talented. They are so detail oriented. They're doing stuff with skin that we have never been able to do. And every year, it's like it's like medical field. Every year, it gets just cataclysmically better. So because of that, and inflation and shrinkflation and everything else,
absolutely.
You have to increase. So at the time, we were like, well, we need to change the narrative, because in town it was a lot of what felt like more like street shops, and because they were just, they were filling a niche of trying to get in all these service guys and gals and others that were all trying to come in and get stuff done quick, and that was with a formula that worked. I wanted to do something different, because the way I looked at it, if you have a saturated market, the first thing you should look at is, well, what are you doing exactly the same? What could
Yeah,
you
yeah.
do different that would maybe be a draw? And I didn't, it's not like I had it secret. I was like, well, if we're going to do custom shop stuff, I need the shop to look more highbrow. So it makes the sense that, okay, this place is fancy. I can't control how they conduct themselves. So if they are, you know, deemed unprofessional in certain people's eyes, they're eccentric. We are artists. We, you know, some of us, some of us have a different code than
Just
others.
like band members.
Exactly like band members. It's exactly like that. And high-profile doctors and surgeons, same thing. I show up when I want to. It's like they turn into wizards. Like, a wizard's never late. He's on time. And you're like, okay, well, go tell your client that's upset about, you know. But we all, like, to get some wiggle room, I figured, well, if I, instead of the shop looking like it's all, you know, sea foam with orange paint and drips everywhere.
And flash all over the walls.
Had flash everywhere.
Yes.
And it was like flash racks, like
Yes.
big flash racks. So pulled all that out. I started hand picking. We all started hand picking art pieces to put on the wall. Like, this is art.
Art.
I made a speakeasy boutique vibe. It's very like old world downtown, you know, apothecary-ish feel to it, like an old Western saloon. That's really where a lot of the mentality came from, because I kept thinking, how beautifully insane are those really old ass 1800 late pictures. You have dirt roads, you have road grime, you have people walking in looking like they literally do nothing but wallow in the mud, and they come up belly up to a gorgeous inlaid wood bar with all this ornate
Which is what the front desk looks like.
Right.
Right.
And, you know, my dad, before he passed away, for my birthday, he made that for me. I was like, I need a bar. And he's like, I got you. And I was like, oh, I guess he's going to go find me a bar. And then he brought a bar up that he made for me. And I was just like, this is amazing. You know, that's another thing about anything, whether you're doing music, whether you're doing business, whether you're doing a trade, whether you're doing art or whatever, it is vital to have the right people around you. I think
I'm sure you have had to go through some juggling with that.
Yeah,
you know,
I think
because they're humans,
right? And I think that's the thing. Like, nothing is a constant. I think what happens is they're like, all right, I have this situation handled nice, so I can step away from it. And he goes, yeah, but what you're not, you know, attesting to is your manager having a big family emergency and having to go for 6 or 8 months. Yeah. You don't want to be a dick and be an owner. It's like, well, how did you hear? It's like someone, they're needed somewhere. Life happens, right? You know, it's the same thing with, you know, I have a lot of women that work at the shop now. I've never had this many women, but there's times where, you know, if any of them wanted to have kids and need time off, they give me a unique opportunity to help them, because, you know, and just like with most men, if their spouses are having kids, they just want to freaking work. So, like, I try to work with what they want. And it's the same thing with people that have big families. They're like, please just let me stay at work. And I'm like, hey, okay. Hey, no worries, man. Like, what the beauty thing about shops, and I think a lot of people don't realize it, is it does not matter if it's if it is a single artist with a private studio, or you're working at a shop like mine where there's, you know, 8 to 10 to 15 people working there. They are all considered independent contractors. They all handle everything differently. There are different pros and cons to being in a private studio versus working at a small shop versus working at a big shop versus working at a custom shop or a street shop. It all just greatly depends on what kind of career you're trying to do. Do you want to work all the time? When I was younger, I worked all the time. And it was fine. And when I mean all the time, you know, 8, 12 hours a day, at least 6 days a week. And then I would bring people in on my days off just to make money, because I was single. I didn't have any, you know, I didn't have a kid. I didn't have a house. I was renting an apartment. So I just didn't want to go do anything. I was not social. I didn't really go and drink. I just stayed and did work and tried to manage the shop. And it wasn't even mine. It was someone else's. So when I got mine, it just kind of was real easy to just apply all of that. But by the time I opened the shop, I had a young son. So I wanted to capitalize on all of the experience that I have without pulling what my dad did. Me and my dad reconnected when I was like 15, 16, but as I was younger, he would always work, because he didn't do the whole small kid baby thing too much, and he felt like it was awkward, but he was like, the best thing I can do for my son is just work and make sure he never is without clothes, without food, without lodging. And he did a great job. And then when I started getting into sports, he started being like, that's my baby. And then he'd come and watch the shows or whatever. He even went into music. He'd come watch me play music and stuff. Hated all of the music stuff, but the sports stuff, he loved it. So,
But he went anyway.
He would go anyway. He definitely would go. He's like, that was good then. And then he would go home. So I had a really good support system from the beginning, even with it being flawed. I utilize what can work for me. And it's the same thing with working at a big shop. Lots of different owners, lots of different eccentric folks. I think a lot of people make that mistake of, hey, it would be like you being like, hey, man, you're really good at the gunsmithing and the gun trading. You should have a gun store. And what they don't realize is running a store is not the same as running what you are doing and, and like monetizing it. So that it's what I use the metaphor.
I get that all the time.
Dude, I use it as a metaphor for tattooers, because tattooers do that. They'll get to a point where they're booked fully. They are revered. They are 8 months booked out. Ricky, everyone knows about him. And then they go, hey, when are you going to open your own shop? And what they don't realize is you go from managing yourself, and that is the caveat. That's the plus. All the investments, all of the putting your neck out, all of the trials and tribulations, they're on your shoulders. So you're overly confident because you're like, well, even if it's bad, I got this. When you go into running a shop, you now are trying to manage people. And if you are awkward with trying to talk, and people don't ever realize that you have to be able to tell people bad news that they might be upset with. You need to be able to be slow to escalation. You have to be very understanding, or you know what I mean? Like, and these are not like cons, but they're tough if you're not used to dealing that. You got to do a lot of considering. I do a lot of empathizing. I do a lot of putting myself in their position, because ultimately I don't want the shop to just be a powerhouse of money making. I want everyone to excel, because I'm putting in they're all trusting me to be an owner. So I have to handle, I get to handle stuff like the future view of the shop, logos, what direction. It goes into advertisement. Like, none of them have a say.
I've noticed though, your booth room is behind the front desk, right? And I noticed Ben's not in there a lot.
Right. Yeah. I do a lot of.
You are doing other things now. You are in there,
right?
Every now and then I go in there and you got somebody laid out but I don't see you in that booth a whole lot.
Right. I'm usually I usually am there from in the morning right before we open, and I'm usually there until maybe at least 4 or 5 every day, except for maybe I take my day off and then the shop's closed on Sundays. I pick that scheduling because I have a 16-year-old. Very soon he's going to be off and doing his own thing, and ever since he was young, I wanted to be able to stay in the loop and be able to take time off. He runs cross country, so I'm at
following.
Yeah, I'm at every event. I'm at every he does track too in the off season. I'm at every track event. I try really hard to be there, because the time I noticed my dad's efforts outside of just providing a future for me monetarily and stuff was when I played sports. So I wanted him to understand I will support him in anything he wants to do.
So give me a couple examples of what is the best part about owning a shop. Doing what you do. What's the best couple of examples of the best parts?
It's twofold. I have one for individualism, and then I have one that is just global, and it makes me happy. So the individual thing is I love being able to make any client happy with whatever they're trying to express themselves with. And I try really hard to give them any of my 2 cents for my expertise, just to help them along. But whenever they are happy and I am happy, and it turns out to being just a great session, great experience, great tattoo, it immediately makes any kind of negative that I've ever had to deal with in the industry just worth it. Because you're like, this is what it is.
This is as a shop, not just your booth, but as a shop.
Yeah, because every good thing that walks out of the shop makes all of us look good. Even if my name's on it, the shop's name's on it as well. So at the individual level, that is that's a thing that I enjoy. But another thing that I probably enjoy even more, I love having my success defined by watching the successes of everyone in the shop as well. So it isn't just one person making all of the money and everyone else struggling.
Yeah.
And I'm over here as the owner going, well, I don't know what to tell you. I watch the folks I work with, my coworkers. I watch them buy new cars. I watch them get married. I watch them buy houses. I watch them have another child. I watch them get a bunch more animals. I watch them travel more, go on trips that they otherwise couldn't have done before they met everyone at the shop. I like that kind of success because that is them expressing their success. It's one thing to just stay and be like, well, I'm single right now. I got my head down. I'm just going to like fill the storehouses. And then all of a sudden they're out and they're about. But it's even better to watch everyone's daily life just kind of peak. You hear more of the buzz. I love going places and people are like, oh, that shop. Yeah, I get tattooed by so-and-so there. And it's just always a rotation of everyone at the shop.
Yeah.
You know, like that's the hard part is trying to weed out any kind of negative because it will feed a huge thing. So you try really hard to stay on top of stuff. And it is managing people, big parts of people. So that if you don't like people, being an owner would never be fun.
Yeah,
because,
I can see that.
Because I think a lot of people, it's the same thing with being like venues where they're like a jaded musician opening a venue is the worst because he's going to be like, yay, now I have my list of people that I won't let in the door. And it
Fuck
goes,
you, fat boy.
It's like, what are you doing? I'm like, why would you go into business going, okay, here's the list of people that I don't want to serve. And it's like, that's silly. It's the same thing with tattooing. It's like I think people come in, they're like, well, it's my shop. You do what I say. And he goes, okay, yeah, you're right. And very soon it just will be you. It'll be just you.
Yeah. So, all right. So we have that side. Now the other side. If there were things you wish you could change, but you don't have control over, those type of things of the owning a shop like that.
I would probably say that one of the bigger things to hurdle over against is tattooing industry has come from a counterculture start. It was started to be more self-expression.
Yep.
And it came at a cost of, we're the kids your mom, warned us about kind of vibe, right? And it wasn't as professional as much as it was to just strike a statement, right? So I think what happens is you get a lot of gruffer egos, and then you get a lot of I think everyone in the industry that's been tattooing for more than 5 years, they've worked for a boss that they have nothing good to say about.
Right.
And I probably have been labeled that at some point in my life, but life is about change and experience and getting to being a better version of yourself. So, you try to learn really quickly to move forward, but you get a lot of the insurgents of people who are like, well, no matter what this person tells me, I cannot tell them this or that as negative because I will be fired the second I am there. Yeah. And I try really hard to get past that. I'm like, listen, you give me your 2 weeks, no harm, no foul. I'm not upset because part of life is progression and development. The turnover for most tattoo artists is anywhere from 3 to 5 years. Most of the time, they don't stay there any longer. I've had the luxury. Which
makes sense because they get better. They got to move on.
Graduate. I never hired people going, I can't wait for you to never go anywhere. No, the whole point is to you move on. Whether you move somewhere now, granted, you would hope that it would be in the right ways and in the right, because at the end of the day, no matter what I do, when people have their minds, it's like dealing with a teenager. You can go to them and have an adult conversation because they will say, I want you to teach me like an adult. And you're like, okay. And you have that very adult conversation and they will still deceive and be less than 100% with you. And you have to just eat that because you're the ridiculous one now if you pull them out of the line and go, listen here, adult son, you make me feel like an idiot. Like you can't do that. So it's the same with work. All I do is I just don't give people the benefit of the doubt as much anymore. And I just try to do everything as ethical and as helpful as possible, regardless of what it looks like. And if, I try to be an open book and have any open dialect and conversation. My door's always open if anyone wants to talk to me. But most of the time, by the time I get the conversation, people have made their minds up. They're ready to go. And I get that. My younger self had to put lines in the sand for me to commit to certain things. Right. So not bringing it up to your boss, who may or may not be, he does have the authority to fire you in immediate without fulfilling the 2 weeks. You would go in there going, well, I'm ready to pack my stuff up right now because he's going to go, well, why don't you just get your shit and go out, which is very common. I mean, I just picked up a guy now. The same thing. He's like, I'm gonna do my notice. And I said, all right, cool. And the next day he goes, so can I start today? And I said, absolutely, because it's just common.
Right, yeah, very much so. I mean, otherwise he'd be. I just want to get out of this situation and get right back into this one, please. You know?
Right. So I think really trying to be genuine with settings that people win no extra prizes with being genuine is hard because you put a lot of yourself into these decisions. And I think because people can label it, oh, it's just business. They don't realize that a lot of this stuff I'm putting a lot of myself into. And maybe that's my fault. But I was getting to a point where I was not happy with how we were doing and how the shop was going. And I just felt like it was turning into more and more of like it fed into a part of the shop that I never had a problem with up until I felt like we were becoming pretentious to the point where we were alienating ourselves. So lately now I am happier with the crew that I have now than I have ever been in probably 15 years of being open.
Okay.
These guys and gals and everyone in between, they all seem to be on the same page. We all try to help each other out. In the first time we have, when we have open availability for walk-ins, we try to put people in to where they would benefit and flourish. So if we have a gray wash guy and the walk-in comes in, we try to get him in there instead of, everything walks in, there's a conversation point of whether or not that artist is capable of it. And there's a lot of broad things we can do. Just because I specialize in one doesn't mean I can't do others. But if we can pad the deck for certain people, we will. And this is the first time we've copacetically worked this well with this many people. This is more piercers than I've had in my entire life, and they're just rocking it. It's amazing.
So where does Ben want to go now? How do you have any plans of changing your path or changing the path of No Egrets?
That's a really good question. It's one of those things where I think the trick is when you have a set or like an original set of goals. I think what I was never taught is when you achieve those goals, you should have a new set of goals right behind them, or you're just gonna die on top of the mountain looking at the clouds.
There's my goal. I'm there.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm forever trying to but honestly, the stuff that I want to do is I want to build each person in the shop. I want them to be known for their individualism, and it's just the luxury of being able to say that they work at a shop that I own, and they get to do their thing when they're in town and stuff like that. Like that is the longevity. There's other stuff too, like there's interior things that I do. Like I really am trying to figure out how to, because another big thing is, since everybody's independent contractors, you're at this level where you're just praying that nothing physical happens to you medically, because none of these people, it's hard to afford insurance as an independent, especially if you have an entire family. So I'm trying really hard to do stuff like that individually with people, giving them, buy-in options for giving them insurance agent deals. Like I have an insurance agent that I work with, but we're trying to formulate it to work within the shop as well. Or even like a retirement program for people, because that's unheard of. Everybody works until their freaking hands fall off in this industry, or your back breaks.
Then they have nothing.
Because it's not that they have nothing. Is, one could argue that with it being an eccentric creative business, there's a reason why not a lot of corporate types come in here, and corporate mindsets is usually where a lot of the organizational skills come from, and the good efficiency with money. I'm not saying every artist is bad with money, but I'm saying there's a reason why artists usually don't do regular 9-to-5ers, because they don't want to be dependent on money. And yet you get to a point, and everyone gets to a point in their career where they're like, I fucking hate having to deal with money as much. Because you can have a $2,000 or $3,000 day, but you still have to arrange all of your own, you have to pay for all of your stuff. You have to also arrange for your own taxes and stuff, because me as an owner, I have to report what each individual person makes. So I tell them, I go, listen, there's other shops that would be willing to kind of like scrub stuff for the betterment of you. I can't do that because the shop is so big. Like if the shop was 4 to 5 guys, girls, that would be different. I have like 11 to 13 people there at any given moment. you hit a different tax bracket price point where they watch every damn thing you do now. So it's one of those things where I'm not like, the shop is this engine that is it's just rolling, and I am just holding on to it. And I think people think that I take the whole train down to the bank and cash checks. It is so much more elaborate than that. And at the end of the day, I have what I need to survive, and I have all the rest of it to play with the shop in order to get everyone to their next level. And to me, that's kind of where the payoff is, because you can be just as successful. You can be booked out of your ass the whole time, fully booked for a year in a private studio, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I implore people, if they find it hard to deal with authority, if they do not like answering to someone or feel like they're answering to someone, by all means do that. That is the smartest thing for you. No one is holding, at least I'm not holding anybody back. If you feel like you're doing better, totally cool. But there are benefits to being a part of a shop. We've watched it too, where we have, for whatever reasons, people moved on or whatever, and they're not at the shop anymore. They will call the shop and be like, I just had someone, when I contacted them, hey, I just want to confirm our appointment. And by the way, I'm not over at No Egrets. I'm over at this address, so you just come on in. Your deposit's fine. They'll be like, oh, no, we want to go to No Egrets. And I have no control over that. I try to help everybody out where I can, but I like brand loyalty, because we've worked really, really hard for 15 years to market ourselves under a thing. Now, granted, when you get to a certain level of exposure, you're going to get the bad with the good. We can't make everybody happy. This is, a bougie shop might not be for everybody. That's totally fine. I try really hard not to trash talk people. If you like the guy in town, I can never compete with someone that you've been going to for 15 years that has already your dialed in. When you tell me, hey man, my friend can do this for $50 an hour, I would implore you to go there, because I'm not your friend like that. We haven't done that. They probably have hundreds of hours with you already. So that makes more sense. But it's one of those things where, like, I want everyone to feel success in what their definition of success is. Because a lot of owners is, my definition of success, the second I crack that door open, I hear all those tattoo machines going nonstop. That's success to me. That's money, not success. There's a difference. So one is generational, like churning, and the other one is grinding and just being smart at smart business deals. I mean, I don't do all of my books. I have a bookkeeper, because I'm not good at that. So
I don't do marketing. I suck at it.
I don't mind paying someone that's their thing. And that's that whole spend money to make money thing. Like if you branded your stuff on apparel, but you didn't want to handle the apparel because you don't want to have a carousel and emulsion and paints and stuff, you pay a guy to do it, or a girl to do it, or a person to do it, and that is the plus. And someone like my dad would be like, I just wouldn't give all that money away. And I'm like, I'm not. I'm paying this guy to make that part of my life easier. I don't mind cutting into the pie.
Plus, all ships rise.
Exactly. If you're doing well. If you're doing your job, I'm doing my job, we both get notoriety from the same venture. So it works. It's the same thing with good tattooer. Like, if you do an entire sleeve that's good, that one sleeve will get you more work, because you take care of your people, and everyone will funnel them to you.
So as we're signing out here, what is one thing you would tell folks? One thing about, let's say, I want my own business. Let's put tattooing aside.
Okay.
All right. I want to start my own venture. What is the number one line you would give somebody?
Research.
That
is because
can't do it enough.
It's one thing to be like, I want to be a business owner. What kind of business I want to open? Well, I don't know. Okay, do your research. What is the most lucrative turnkey operations that's been in the last 5 years? Okay, cool. What's the price of that? All right, cool. Break down that. Or let's say you wanted to do, like, let's say you're like, I want to be a business owner. I kind of always like drinking coffee. Don't go look up fucking coffee. Look up, why shouldn't I open a shop or a coffee shop or whatever? And then you start realizing, okay, I should probably start looking into, like, the government really wants to help subside small business owners. So if you've never opened a business before, I would then go to all your government websites and see if there's any grants or any money that they would be willing to help first-time small business owners. There was a time where the government really wanted people to do small businesses. there might still be ripples of that there. You just have to look for it.
Right.
And then in between that, go over it and troubleshoot everything before you pull the trigger on anything. Like, look at it and try to poke holes in all of your logic. This is what I want to do. Okay, how easy can this fuck up? How bad can it shit the bed?
My deal is, I tell folks, don't take your failure as, don't get frustrated with your failures.
Nope.
You know, this is my third business, and the other two didn't fare too well. Okay, I don't care. I did learn a lot from them, which has improved what I'm doing now. You know, with Graybeard and Black Armor Guns. But okay, anything else going on?
One thing I was going to tell you, you brought up a good point. One more thing. That is such a key thing about failure. Yeah, people are so afraid to fail, and now with the ability to have everything like we're doing here, everything's just logged. Yeah. Everyone's afraid to look like a failure. It's not even look stupid. They just don't want to look. They don't want their failure to be public, but they want all their success to be public as fuck, right? So, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I think what happens is people are like, oh, I failed and now I look stupid. And no, that's not what it is. You show me someone that's never failed, and I'll show you a guy that's never done anything. Because you have to do
never taken any chances.
You have to move it forward and take the chances. And one more thing though, I wanted to give you this. I wanted to hand this off to you for having me here.
A gun.
I appreciate it. No, a machine. Let's call it a machine.
We'll call it a machine. YouTube, this is a machine, not a gun. So I'm going to put this on my display.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me go do that right now. Let's find me a spot back here. I think this will sit here somewhere.
Yeah, it'll sit up. That's beautiful.
There we go.
Looks gorgeous.
Looks nice. Okay, so, all right, Ben.
Yes, sir.
You have social media?
Yeah, I have. I just funnel everything to the shop page. I got IG, Instagram, Facebook. No Egrets Tattoo Studio.
So I always funnel people to my website, which has all that listed instead of me having to regurgitate every damn thing. Just go to blackarmorguns.com or graybeardsyndicate.com.
No Egrets Tattoo.com.
No egrets.
No egrets.
Not no regrets.
No, it's the
regrets.
Bird. It's the bread.
Not
it's
one
the
letter?
bird. Not the regrets. Yeah.
No egrets.
No
like
egrets,
the bird.
Like the bird. Yes.
And you'll see on the website there'll be a cage.
You'll see the cage.
With nothing in it.
You'll see all of our artists. You'll see how to book information. You'll see times and dates of our availability.
All the social media links will be on there. The whole 9 yards. Your artists are all listed, and
they're all listed.
Has their work.
Yeah,
on
they're
there.
listed with their portfolios and their booking information. Nice. They all handle their own scheduling, so you can just kind of start chatting with them what their desired method of conversion is.
Right, too easy. So, all right, thanks for coming today. I really appreciate it, and for you guys, be good to each other.
Yeah.